Hi, I'm Colleen Sheehan with Next Generation Classics, and I'm here to show you why classic cars are just as amazing as modern supercars. Today, I'm going to show you how with this 575 Maranello. It is a modern classic that definitely should not be overlooked. The 575 is the predecessor to Ferrari's very successful 550 Maranello, and it is one of their grand touring cars. So a GT car is more built for that long, kind of comfortable drives versus their sportier models. And this is very reminiscent of the Daytonas and the 275 GTBs with the front long nose, short rear end, and the engine is in the front. And now the 575 looks very similar to the 550, but they've made a lot of little tweaks and improvements to just make it that much faster and more user-friendly. So when we're talking about a Ferrari, we have to talk about the heart of the car, this massive V12 up front. And the full name of the 575 is 575M Maranello, whereas the 550 was just 550 Maranello. So that extra little M stands for modificata, which is how Ferrari is telling you that they've taken the 550 and they've modified it to make it a little more user-friendly, a little faster, and just refined everything about it. So the engine in this car, it went from 5.5 liters in the 550 to 5.75 in the 575. Hence where the name comes from. And they boosted the horsepower a bit, so it has about 508 horsepower, and it has a top speed of about 202 miles an hour, so gives you that extra little oomph. When you put a 550 and a 575 next to each other, they do look very similar, but there are a few easy ways to tell the difference. So first off is the grille on the 575 is a bit larger than that on the 550, but that is one of the more kind of subtle differences. So unless they're next to each other, that's kind of hard to tell. But an easy tell is the headlights. So while they're the same shape on both cars, on a 550, it's circle, circle, triangle. But on a 575, it's 3 circles. So you can walk up to the front of one of these, see the 3 circles, and know that it's a 575. One of the improvements that they've made in a 575 that is not visual, but it's something you can definitely tell while driving the car, is its weight distribution is very, very even. It's almost a 50-50 split. So the engine on this car, it's a big 12-cylinder engine up front. And so a lot of these heavy front engine cars get front heavy, right? And so that can cause a lot of problems when driving. But what Ferrari did is they took the engine, and it's pretty far back in the front of the car towards the driver, and then they put the rear transaxle over the rear axle with a torque tube in between. So that way you get the 2 heavy mechanical components distributed between the front and the rear, giving you really good balance. So it helps to prevent the understeer, oversteer, and it just makes the car more predictable when you're driving it. So to go into a little more depth onto why the 50-50 weight distribution is so important. Basically, when you're in a powerful car like this and you stomp on the gas, you want to put the power to the ground. When you just spin the tires, I mean, it's cool and all, but you're not getting anywhere, obviously. So having the transaxle over the rear end puts weight on it to where you're gonna get more power to the ground and actually launch instead of just burn rubber. Additionally, when you hit the brakes, if you have the gearbox and engine in the front, that means you're very front heavy. So the rear end is going to be really light. So if you hit the brakes real hard with bad weight distribution, the rear end is going to get even lighter because you dip forward and want to come around and you spin. So that weight distribution it makes the car so much more predictable when you're driving it, which gives you a lot more confidence because you know what the car is going to do and what to expect out of it. So the Ferrari 550 was basically the first car that Ferrari made where you could add options, which is such a stark contrast to nowadays when options are pretty much endless. But with the 550 and the 575, they had a very short option list. So one of the options was a fender badge right here, and it was the Ferrari shield on the fender. I personally like how sleek and kind of understated the cars look without the badge, but that's all personal preference. And then on the interior, they had a few options. So one of the big ones was Daytona seats, like this one. So this has both the Daytona seats, which are the seat inserts, the little kind of stripes in the seat, and then these red piping around the seats as a color accent to the outside of the car. And there were a few other options on the interior. The 575 actually offered some carbon fiber options that were not available on the 550. But even if you were to add all the options you could on your 575, it was still a list of like maybe 10 things. Whereas on cars nowadays, it's literally an endless list, only limited to how much money you're willing to spend. So it's quite a stark contrast between the options that were available back in the day versus now. So they made about a little over 2,000 of the 575s, which actually is a lot less than they made of the 550s. They made a little over 3,000 of the 550 Maranellos. And the 575s, they made about 250 or 260 of them in stick shift. So those are the most desirable and valuable of the 575s. But a majority of them were made with the paddle shift, and it was the first time that Ferrari added a paddle shift to their front engine V12 Grand Touring cars. And honestly, I'm pretty glad that they waited to add it to the Grand Touring cars. Ferrari's first time that they did a paddle shift was in the 355. And those were a little bit lurchy, and once you got used to them, it was okay, but it took some getting acclimated to. Whereas the 575, it's a bit smoother and more refined. So these cars are just excellent kind of everyday driver, comfortable, powerful cars, and definitely an amazing kind of bang for your buck. The 575 wasn't just a facelift from the 550. They really reworked everything. The engine, transmission, electronics, everything was perfected in this car. And while some of the more sporty cars, especially with the mid-engine cars, they can be a little bit more difficult to handle, but the 575 really refined the Grand Touring cars to make it so user-friendly while still delivering over 500 horsepower. So it was that perfect kind of transition between the old school classic front engine V12s and then the more modern paddle shift cars. So it's, in my opinion, one of the perfect kind of modern classics in a price point that is still very attainable. So this is a very kind of underrated and overlooked car that I don't think people are going to overlook for too much longer because it is just so pretty and so much fun. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and learned a little something about the 575. If you like this, then please subscribe and stay tuned because we got a lot more videos coming very soon.